For his pre-draft press conference, general manager Darren Mougey spoke to reporters in Florham Park, New Jersey, and it's such great timing that our beat reporter here in his weekly spot, Nick Faria, was actually in attendance for the press conference, and he will break down the biggest takeaways from what Mougey had to say and much more, all coming up here on a Monday edition of NY Flight Jets Talk, right here, right now. Let's go.
Jets, Jets, let's go.
Jets wide receiver Wesley Walker. Wesley, how you doing today? ESPN writer Mr. Rich Cimini, Jets reporter for The Athletic, Mr. Zach Rosenblatt, Hall of Famer, and Jets legend, Mr. Marty Lyons.
Your host, Connor Law.
What is going on, everyone? Hello, and welcome back here into another edition of NY Flight Jets Talk. Make sure you smash that like button and hit subscribe, completely free. Helps us grow significantly here on the show. The paid way help us grow. You can get into our membership raffle. Every membership gifted or $2.99 super chat will earn you a raffle entry prize. We're giving away included Don Maynard signed photo, Joe Klecko signed helmet, Joe Namath Super Bowl III replica ring, CJ Mosley signed jersey, a free item from our merch store, and a channel emoji. Make sure you're getting on that if you haven't already. More tickets you have, the higher chance to win, but completely free. Like, share, and subscribe. Throw all your questions for us in the chat. We will get to those. You can call into the show with the pinned comment at the top of the chat. But joining me right now, here he joins us every single Monday, kind enough to do so, at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. It's the great Nick Faria, my teammate over at JetsXFactor.com, who is actually in Florham Park today, like I mentioned, to attend Darren Mougey's press conference. And Nick, so much to get into. Darren Mougey was very, very insightful today, so super happy to have you on to break it down.
Yeah, no, 100%. Great to be back on, Connor. And yeah, it's a couple of days before the draft, so everyone's trying to get in the last bit of work they need to before the big day.
1,000%, and there weren't many takeaways from today. Darren Mougey and the Jets kind of stick to that same mold of when this new regime first kicked off, of trying to stay discreet, not letting anyone know about their draft plans. I'd say the biggest takeaway from today is Mougey pretty much officially announcing that the Jets will be exercising the fifth-year option on all three first-round picks from that 2022 NFL draft class in Jermaine Johnson, Garrett Wilson, and Sauce Gardner. This is really interesting because we all know Garrett Wilson and Sauce Gardner. They're coming up for extensions. We've started the conversation of what an extension could potentially look like for one of those guys. But the interesting name for me here is Jermaine Johnson. Most notably because he missed pretty much the entirety of the 2024 season, due to a torn Achilles suffered in week 2. And the fifth-year option for him comes at a bit of a hefty price for someone who's coming off a torn Achilles at $13.4 million. What are your thoughts on the Jets, paying Jermaine Johnson this amount of money and picking up his fifth-year option as he's coming off a torn Achilles?
This is precisely what the fifth-year option is for. This is what makes the most sense. The no-brainers are the Sauce Gardners, the Garrett Wilsons. You're trying to maximize the cap value for as long as you possibly can before you have to pay them $30, $31 million a deal per year. But with Jermaine Johnson, he's coming off a major injury. It's not fair, and I will say this, and I've said this repeatedly, it is not fair for Jet fans to expect Johnson to just magically flip the coin and be 100% and be a 10-sack player coming off that Achilles right away to start the 2025 season. It's unrealistic, and you are setting yourselves up for failure if you're just going to magically expect that. You hope that is the case. There's obviously the possibility that it could happen, but by and large, you have to give him at least a month of preparation before he really starts hitting their stride and moving forward in that end. So the Jermaine Johnson side of it isn't surprising to me. That's exactly what the other side of the fifth-year option is for. Extending your players a little bit so you can maximize the cap value, but also giving those first-round picks who've dealt with injuries extra opportunities to be successful.
Nick, Aaron Rodgers obviously went on the Pat McAfee show on Thursday and blatantly called out the Jets organization. Darren Mougey refused to comment on the situation, but Tom Pelissero of NFL Network was on the Rich Eisen show. Thought he made some great points from what he heard overall with the Aaron Rodgers situation. Kind of just want to go over this quickly. For you, I know you wrote a column for Jets X Factor on why the Jets came out as the winners in this situation, why you think this regime is off to a great start. And this is another example that proves exactly why. For those who didn't catch the article, why are the Jets the true winners of what Aaron Rodgers said on Thursday?
Well, for starters, Aaron Rodgers is out of a job right now. That's number one. But the other piece to this, listen, for 2 years, the Jets were just known as this dysfunctional mess of a team with anonymous sources coming in left or right. Now, if that was because of Aaron Rodgers or not, I'm not going to sit there and speculate. But there were anonymous sources going inside and outside the organization, really since Rodgers decided to show up and become a New York Jet.
All the
By
attention.
coming back and sort of scaling back and saying, listen, is Justin Fields Aaron Rodgers? Of course not. Of course not. But is he a kind of quarterback that we can rely on to grow moving forward, believe in moving forward, where he can develop and he can develop into a quality player? Maybe. And I think that's what they're going on. They're working on silence. They want to have a quiet offseason. They have done so to this point. And just having the Aaron Rodgers saga end in any way, shape, or form is a positive for the Jets moving forward. I was of the opinion if they wanted to be competitive in 2025, they needed to keep him on the roster. But this is about establishing a culture. This isn't about winning right away. It's not about putting forward a team that's going to win, 10, 11, 12 games. This is about just putting on a product that the fan base can be proud of. And you can do that with Justin Fields as the quarterback.
For sure. And let's be real. Aaron Rodgers, all the distractions that come with him. When he's playing like 2021 Aaron Rodgers, where he's an MVP, and we haven't seen that since 2021, but when he's playing like that, you're okay with the off-field distractions. You're okay with what he's going on and saying on the Pat McAfee show. But when he begins to struggle and play like a bottom-tier quarterback, which we saw at points last season, that's when things that were not problems when he's having success become problems and teams start to worry about. I'm all for the Jets moving on from Aaron Rodgers, and I don't think either side, in my eyes, particularly looks great in this situation. But I really like that Aaron Glenn and Darren Mougey were kind of like, hey, we don't want you here. We're asserting our authority over you. And that's something I really like. And the whole thing, well, this could have been handled over a phone call. If you call up Aaron Rodgers, he would have been going on the Pat McAfee show saying, oh my God, they didn't have the courtesy to fly me out. What a pitiful organization. And my favorite thing that no one's talking about is how different he's been talking since he's no longer a New York Jet to compare when he was a Jet. He was, how grabbed these 2 years were the best years of his life. And then he gets out. He's like, I'm not surprised this is the way things are unfolding based on some things I saw there. So you never know what to believe with this guy at this point in his career. I really think he's nothing more than just a distraction. So I'm happy the Jets turn the page. I mean, Nick, with the draft 3 days away, whatever it is now, everyone's kind of shifted their focus to these prospects, who the Jets are going to draft. But people forget there are still some quality names out on the free agent market. I wrote an article earlier today for X Factor revealing a free agent I think could fit really, really nicely with the Jets, who was actually released a few weeks ago, so he wouldn't count against the Jets' compensatory pick formula. That's Jawan Bentley. He would add much-needed bulk to this linebacker room. He would provide depth. We obviously love Jamie and Sherwood. Quincy Williams, quality player coming off a down season. Behind them, Chaz Surratt, Jackson, Sermon, a lot of unproven question marks. I think the Jets could really use some linebacker depth, especially one who's able to help stop the run, especially someone who's going to offer much-needed bulk. Thoughts on Jawan Bentley as a potential fit for the Jets?
Certainly a possibility. They could also look to the draft for a linebacker room. They're going to have plenty of opportunities, plenty of resources to bring in the kind of caliber players that they want. I know there's a push between some reporters to say, hey, the Jets could really target a defensive player with the 7th overall pick, and whether it's a defensive lineman, whether it's the corner from Texas, there's a lot of different avenues they can go in. But the Jets have a lot of holes on this roster, and that's not really the worst thing in the world to be at, because it allows you to go best player available when developing this team through the draft, when looking at free agents after the draft. Some of the best free agent signings have come after the draft because they are the supreme value signing, if you will, for any particular organization. Would make a lot of sense on the Jets account to take a linebacker, whether it's Bentley in free agency or in the draft as well. I think they're going to come away where they'll be very comfortable with their linebacker room right now.
Appreciate you all tuning in. Make sure you smash that like button, hit subscribe. Nick Faria, Connor Long here with you. Monday edition of NY Flight Jets Talk. Any questions for Nick and I, throw them in the chat. We'll get to those. Appreciate all your support. As always, we'll start things off with Rover, who comes in and says, Connor, we are all complicating the draft. This draft will likely be like every other draft. OTs and defensive ends in the first round. If a team passes on an offensive tackle or a defensive tackle, It's unfortunate. Well, Rover is speaking Nick Faria's kind of language
I'm
here on the show.
like, wait a minute, this sounds almost verbatim for an article or two. Listen, there are 5 positions of supreme value where if you're going to take them in the first round, you better take them in the first round because you can't get that value elsewhere. Quarterback, wide receiver, offensive line, edge rusher, corner. Those 5. You have top players at those 5 positions, you are going to be a highly successful football team. All the great teams, the Super Bowl contenders, have those players. Even when the Bengals made the title in 2021, they had those 5. You have to look at it and say, okay, do the Jets have the quarterback? Well, we don't know. We know they have the receiver. They have some of the offensive line. They have some of the defensive line. And their secondary seems to be solid right now. So, defensive line, offensive line, that's a clear target. You could go for another receiver. That would make a lot of sense, maybe in the second or third rounds. But all of those things come into account. If you want to build a sustained winner, people don't like it when I say it, but you should be following the teams that have been in the Super Bowl over the last couple of years. The Kansas City Chiefs and the Philadelphia Eagles have been there because their trenches are better than every other teams around them.
My whole thing, Nick, is the teams that have success, correct, like the Eagles, like the Chiefs, they have great trench play, like you mentioned. They don't have to use a first-round pick almost every single year, though, on an offensive lineman, on a defensive lineman. They're able to build through the later rounds of the draft. I've mentioned to you a couple times the Jordan Mailata example. Like Jeff Stoutland, obviously the best offensive line coach in all of football, hands down. I think if you get a legit offensive line coach in the building, a legit run game coordinator, a good coaching staff, you don't have to start using your first-round pick every single year on the trenches, and maybe you could start providing weapons. I think that's the biggest thing here because the teams that are having success, like you mentioned, they find talent on day 3 and turn these guys into all pros.
Be very careful with that, though, because in 4 of the last 6 drafts, Philadelphia has taken an offensive lineman in the first 3 rounds. Now, the Mailata pick...
Not the first round. Wait, how many have they taken in the first round?
So the first round has been 2.
Lane
and Dillard in 2020.
Well, Dillard was a colossal mistake, and then Lane is the only one who's still there.
It wasn't the mistake because the expectation was he was going to be the Jason Peters replacement.
And that was Mailata.
But what ended up happening was Jeff Stoutland looked at Mailata and said, oh, my God, we've got one of the greatest steals of all time, a rugby guy who never played the down of football. Those guys don't grow on trees. You're not going to be able to pick a random guy from Tennessee and say, oh, he's got a lot of great intangibles. We're going to create him into Jordan Mailata. That was a very rare occurrence. That cannot be the norm that you have for other teams. You get out what you put in for a lot of teams and a lot of organizations. Philadelphia, look what they did in the 2020s early on. They drafted Dillard. They brought in Landon Dickerson. They drafted Cam Jurgens. Tyler Steen's another draft pick. 4 of the last 6 drafts, they've taken offensive linemen within the first 3 rounds. That's got to be the MO. That's got to be the focus moving forward. And the big part that I think no one's talking about is everyone is quick to say that if the Jets were to go with a skill position player, whether it's a tight end, whether it's a corner, a receiver, with the 7th overall pick, then a tackle will be available for them who can be plug and play in round 2. Be very careful because everything I hear right now is as we stand, it's far more likely that a quality starting tight end will be available at 42 than a starting caliber offensive lineman. And now, if that's the case, you are either reaching for offensive linemen or you're pushing a very major hole on the roster into the 3rd or 4th rounds. That's a very dangerous gamble.
You don't think a guy like Ariante Ursary or Josh Connerly Jr. could come in and be starters?
I think they're probably in the late first rounds or very early seconds. There's a very good chance. A lot of these teams, particularly the playoff teams. I'm not talking Buffalo, but Washington could use some offensive line help. You look at the Rams, they're getting older. Could they take a quarterback? Sure, but they could also go offensive line. Tampa Bay needs some reinforcements in the offensive line. Pittsburgh's offensive line broke down later on in the year last year. There's so many different teams that could look for offensive line help later in the 20s that sort of get in the way of those kind of conversations. Look at the Chiefs. The Chiefs' offensive line is in shambles right now. They're going to need to bring in other players. If they were to take in a guy like Connerly, that's another player off the board that the Jets may have been interested in with the 42nd overall pick. I don't know if that tackle that the Jets could be hopeful for in round 2 is going to be available to them when they make that pick.
I think if you can get a legit – if you can get Tyler Warren at 7 and Connerly or Ursery are there at 36, 34, and you slide up a couple spots to give up some draft capital, boom, you get your pass-catching tight end, and then you solidify all 5 spots on your offensive line. I think that would be a great situation for the Jets. I'm still in the mode of pass catcher at number 7. I know we got about 4 minutes left here with Nick, so let's rapid fire through these last few questions here. Rover comes in again, says there's 0 chance we pay Brees. If he plays good, he's too expensive. If he plays bad, he doesn't get a contract.
Yeah, this is the standard for the running back. This is what running backs do, non-elite running backs in particular. It's an uncomfortable situation because Brees, when healthy, is one of the best running backs in football. But is he a Christian McCaffrey? Is he a Saquon Barkley? As of right now, we haven't seen that. And until we do, there's a very, very good chance this upcoming season will be his last as a member of the New York Jets.
Yeah, I get that 1,000%. I've been in the boat. If you can get a 3rd-round pick for Brees Hall, I'd be open to
I don't know
dealing
if
it. That's the thing. You're not. I said if Genty's there at 7, you call up the Broncos and you see if they'd be willing to give you 85.
Oof.
I would take 85 for Brees and Genty at 7.
I would probably wait to see if Dallas wants to move in.
Okay.
Because if you move back to 20,
Kelvin, no, I'm not saying a trade back. I'm saying Genty's there at 7. Mm-hmm. You potentially can send Brees to Denver, a completely different deal than a trade back or a pick swap. Get 85, get your extra 3rd-round pick, and take Genty at 7. I know you're not a big fan of the running back that high.
Yeah, it's the same thing with the tight end. I want nothing to do with positions of lesser value over other positions that you actually have a need for. They have needs on the defensive line. They have needs at tackle. Those are positions you got to figure out before anything else.
Get that 1,000%. John says, I think Ed should be considered in the first 3 rounds. Is important. We need a reliable guy in the rotation to allow Jermaine gradually work his way back in. Love this comment.
Yeah, I completely agree. I've been kind of on the train where Jermaine Johnson's going to need time to develop. There are some free agent edge rushers that may be available that help that process as well. So keep an eye on that. Keep an eye on the free agent pool after the draft. There are also, obviously, this is a very deep defensive line class, a very deep one. So whether it's in the 3rd or the 4th rounds, I think you're going to be able to come away with some quality players along the edge. Look at Josh Sweat. Josh Sweat was a 4th-round pick back in 2018, didn't record a sack his first season, but you saw some spurts in Philadelphia. He became a Pro Bowl player, is now making $76 million with the Arizona Cardinals. So even if you're developing those kinds of young talent along the edge, those are still very quality value picks to be making at that span.
John, a few more here. Says Membu should be the pick. I like Shamar Stewart too at 7. Thoughts on Stewart? I think it's too much of a risk.
Yeah, I wouldn't say Stewart's probably my guy. If you're going to go with an edge rusher at 7, Jalen Walker's probably the big guy right now from Georgia. The way that I see it, it's Abdul Carter is the 1A. You've got the Georgia kid 2, and then everyone else is kind of in that.
You think Jalen Walker's 2?
Oh yeah, no, 100%.
Okay. Yeah. The thing with Walker is tough is because he has the size to play edge,
right.
But then he also plays linebacker. He's kind of the guy that's like a master of all trades, a jack of all trades for me, but a master of none. That's the way I think about it.
If he falls past the Jets and the Jets don't take him, he's going to Carolina. Carolina.
Yeah, that leads us to one of our last comments. Wild Wave says, Jalen Walker, trade Quincy.
I wouldn't I think Walker would be the edge rusher. I think you're looking for Walker to be that edge rusher kind of guy. You put him in the Micah Parsons role, if you will, where you just put him all over the field.
Yes.
Predominantly, you want him on the edge because guys who can rush the passer, when you can rush the passer consistently, you can get 12, 15 sacks a year. You're not putting him in the middle of the field and saying, hey, go cover this guy. You're getting there. You're getting him on the field to rush the quarterback. So I think if Walker's the pick, you're using him as an edge rusher. I don't think you're using him as an off-ball linebacker.
Last question here before we end the show. John comes in, says there are veteran tight ends available. How about you trade Brees to the Raiders for Mike Mayer and a 4th-round pick?
I don't think the Raiders would agree to that. I really don't. I think here's the thing with everyone wants to trade Brees. Everyone I talk to wants to trade Brees. No one really understands that his value is the lowest it's been in years. If you wanted to trade him after the 2023 season when he was 4th in the league in total yards from scrimmage, you've got some clear ammo to make that move. Whether it's a 3rd or a 4th round pick, you would have been able to do that. He's coming off a season, one of his worst in the year. Career high in fumbles, career high in drops, just not a good year overall for the veteran. What value do you think that's going to come up and say? I think fans in sports, fans in particular with football, they undervalue their players. They want to get rid of all their players, but they want to get fair value for those players by hyping them up, even though they don't really believe that. So all these people that are complaining about Breece Hall not being a good quality running back, a lead back, if you will, you shouldn't be looking for a third or a fourth round pick. You should be looking for a fifth or a sixth, maybe even a seventh. You get what you can.
Wow.
If you guys are saying you need to move on that bad, where you do not believe he can come up and develop next season, then every other team's looking at it that way. Every team's looking at it and saying, this isn't the guy. You're trying to move him. Clearly you don't believe in him. Give us, pennies on the dollar to make that move. There's not going to be a team that's going to want to give away a third or a fourth round pick for a running back that the Jets are trying to get rid of. You need to find the value there. That's why I say it may not happen in the draft. Take a look at what happens at the trade deadline. If Breece Hall is having a really good start to the season and the Jets are 3-6 or 2-7, whatever it ends up being, then I could see a situation where Breece Hall is moved, because then the Jets can sit there and say, hey, he's having a good year. He's averaging 5-6 yards a carry, 5-6 yards a touch. Now we can move him for top value for a team that's competing for a championship.
Smash the like button, hit subscribe. Nick and Connor here with you on Monday edition of NY Flight Jets Talk. Nick, can't thank you enough for sparing some time with us as always. I know you were really busy today, cranking out a ton of articles for X Factor, and you were obviously in Florham Park for the press conference, so appreciate you sparing some time. As always, you got any final thoughts here before we wrap up the show?
3 days to go. It's going to be an exciting time. Again, as always, everyone needs to be patient. The Jets are going to come away with some really talented players. It's just a matter of which position they want to value more than anything else. It's going to be a very interesting way. It's going to be a very interesting path for the Jets moving forward, because there's a lot of different avenues they can go in.
Will you be at 1JD for the draft?
That's the expectation. All 3 days.
I will be with the Asmaniacs at Clinton Hall for the draft party. So we'll do an immediate reaction. Obviously, Nick will be at the draft party. So follow Nick for some of the best Jets coverage at Nick_Fario 1720. Did I nail that?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
There we go. So shoot Nick a follow, shoot him a sub. He's the best. Appreciate him sparing some time for us as always. That'll do it for us. Appreciate you tuning in. Smash the like, hit subscribe. He's Nick, I'm Connor, and that's all here on a Monday edition of NY Flight Jets Talk. Appreciate you tuning in, and as always, JTS, Jets. Peace out.